massive, big, warm welcome back to the Health and Safety Digest, a special podcast by Astutis. And as ever, I am your guide through this voyage of health, safety and environmental training, your host, Toby Howell, the digital content writer at Astutis. And it's a bittersweet day today. We are here with another podcast, another episode, but it is the final, it is the conclusion of our chat with Saffire Paris, our esteemed graphic designer / visual extraordinaire. And we are utterly indebted for Sapphire's time in joining us for this particular series of podcasts, which go into immense detail into the innovations, the decision-making into the innovations of the Astutis offering of the NEBOSH Online General Certificate. In this episode, we are focusing mainly on the raw changes. So we're looking at the Learning to Learn module. I cannot wait to bring that to you. The risk assessments, the learning checks, the mock exercises, the simulated tasks, and the real interesting aspect behind experimental learning. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's get straight into our chat with Saffire. My next kind of part was going to be talking about the new kind of obvious additions to the course. Now, as I've said, I've had a little sneak peek. I've been able to put out some new blogs regarding the new features as well, so I've been able to quite investigate them quite myself. But it's very, very useful to get the opinions of the people who actually made these things possible. So a new, really, really fascinating addition to the course for me is this idea of the Learning to Learn module. Now, from what I've been able to notice, is it almost acts as a precursor to the course. It kind of gets the learner to realize that, yes, you're learning, but you're going to have to recite all of this in an exam. So here are some interesting ways that you can revise. Here are some interesting ways that you can retain this knowledge. What was your thought process about the Learning to Learn module?
Yes, so the Learning to Learn module is something that the team came up with, as I think a lot of people have forgotten how to learn. It may seem obvious to a lot of people on how we learn, but a lot of people haven't tried learning in a while, and they'll find that perhaps it doesn't come as second nature. Just reading text on a page isn't sometimes enough for everyone. Sometimes we can forget how to make the information stick, or sometimes we can be confronted with a lot of information and just kind of go, whoa, this is too much for me. So what we do is we put this module at the start of the content, and it helps the learner reconnect with the techniques that they can use throughout the course to actually learn the information and pass the course. And it comes with a wonderful explainer video as well that can help you a little bit more in how to learn. So what this module does is it teaches revision techniques, and it encourages motivation. Like, why does the learner want to do this course? This is a really, really important question to ask. You know, are you doing this to get better at what you do? Are you doing this because somebody else told you? And if that is the answer to the question, that's totally fine. But try and think of some more motivation techniques. You know, your boss has told you to do this, and you want to move up to the next level. Let's go. Let's help you out. We really, really want to help you with your motivations for doing this course. It's incredibly important to us. So we really want to put our learners in the right mindset before starting, so that while they study, they can keep these motivations in mind. They can keep these techniques going. So that's kind of the idea of it.
Well, I wish I had this for when I did the IEMA Foundation Certificate in Environmental Management. It had been, like you said, a very, very long time since I had been asked to memorize and recite information. So having that kind of almost webinar in a way on different revision techniques, you know, using stuff. I've had a look at it. There's mind mapping exercises, categorization exercises, ways that help ignite that idea of reciting information later down the line. That is so useful, especially to people who haven't had that, you know, educational experience for a long time. I completely understand what you mean. And talking about exams, obviously, when it comes to these very, very big courses, these kind of highbrow courses, the idea of exams can be quite daunting. I, for one, hate exams. I do not like exams. I would rather have something in my hand and have a more of a practical exercise. But we've all got to do them. Now, as part of this new course, as part of the new modifications for this new course, you guys have integrated what you have called as exam prep activities. Now, from my little sneak peek, I think these are really, really, really cool. Could you enlighten us more on those?
Of course, yes. So each individual element of the course ends with 3 main key concept activities. They use the techniques that I just mentioned in the Learning to Learn module, and they help the learner start to revise for their exam and retain some of the information they just learned. So one way that it's actually really good is it helps the learners feel confident. So when you go into the exam, you're confident that you've learned and you've revised correctly and properly in a really, really good way. And it helps you or our learners take ownership of their learning. Unfortunately, we can't quite do it all for you as much as we'd love to. So what it's really, really good is, hey, we'd like you to just kind of take a little short stop here, use these techniques. So as you just said, we've got a few different ways that the exam prep modules work. So we've got mind maps. They help summarize key points visually. They can aid in memory. They're used to show different ideas and create links between thoughts, which is really useful. They kind of anchor together. So that's a really, really good technique that you can do. It makes information easier to retrieve. So what we'll do is we'll pop a mind map on the page for you, and you as the learner can fill it in digitally on our course. And there's no wrong answers. You can just fill it in as best as you can, and hopefully that'll allow you to retain the information. Another thing we've done are lists. So lists are fantastic for remembering steps or processes. They break up long pieces of information into easy to digest key points. I'm utilizing a list right now. When prepping for this interview, I wrote a lot of these things into bullet points and lists. So that's really helped me to remember.
You're exemplifying it completely. Yeah. It's full circle.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm going meta on this. So we've got lists as well. So again, no wrong answers. At the end of the element, you can choose to pop your information that you've learned into a list, and we'll give you a prompt question as well. You know, can you write 5 things that you've learned in this module or something like that? And another one we've got as well is categorizing. So categorizing helps to order key information into different compartments. So by kind of popping this information together, you can kind of compartmentalize into different ideas and processes. You know, this information belongs here. Again, we all learn differently. So for this, people, you know, it may help some people more than others, but that's fine. We just encourage you to kind of think, how might these concepts link together? You know, anything we can do to kind of help our learners pass a little bit better or retain some of this information for the big wide world out there. So all of these activities are great for improving assessment results, and we are still playing around with new techniques. Some of these may change and evolve over time through our other courses, or even in this course, as we are constantly looking to improve the learner experience. These prep activities, not only do they appear at the end of every module, they also appear in this one very large module at the end of all of your elements. So if you want to revise before your exam, we don't recommend the night before, but if you'd like to revise before your exam, you can take all of these exam prep modules and look at them in one course that we've put together for you. And you can do all of these mind maps and lists and categories all in one course. In that course, you can skip to the ones you want to revise the most as well. There's no need to do them all if you don't want to. But just rather than going back and trying to find the exact element that you're trying to revise, this is a good way of kind of just revising and just kind of summarizing all of the information you've learned. So it's really, really useful.
I completely agree. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was just about to say one more thing. So by having the course start with the Learning to Learn module and end with the activities, what we're hoping mainly is for our learners to feel confident and engaged with the courses throughout.
Well, I'm sorry to break your flow there, but I completely agree. What I was going to say was, I completely understand the necessity for exam prep, and I know I keep bringing it up, but my experience with the IEMA foundation course was that I only really had the confidence, even though it's a lot different to this. It was the learning checks. And of course, you guys have made drastic improvements to learning checks that we haven't even brought up here. It's all about having that assurance. You can't replicate the experience of these mock exercises that get you really in the zone, that kind of get your mind trained, ready for that experience. Because if you're anything like me, the moment you press begin on that exam, things start to just go blank in your head and you start to think, oh, okay. But then if you've done that before, if you've had plenty of those mock exercises, you've kind of trained your brain. It's brain training at the end of the day. The next one I was going to talk about was risk assessments. Now, as we all know, one of the big learning outcomes, one of the big reasons why people take the general certificate in the first place is to be able to a professional standard complete and accurately complete a risk assessment. It's such an important cog in the health and safety machine for organizations around the world to prevent risk, to basically in hindsight understand why certain accidents happen. It's a huge reason. Now, it connects really quite nicely to the last question, because as part of each unit, at the end of each unit 2 module, learners will have to sit down and they will be confronted with a scenario which involves a simulated risk or that kind of esque thing. And then they've got to complete a risk assessment. This is incredible. This means 20 risk assessments by the end of the course. That's the perfect kind of preparation for their Unit 2 risk assessment, don't you think?
Yes, yeah, it's perfect. I just wanted to touch again a little bit on what you said about the questions as well. So, as you said, we neglected to mention that at the end of every module, the user is confronted with a few questions on what they've learned. Known as a learning check. It checks the knowledge you have learned, and it ensures that you've retained all of the knowledge we've just taught you. So if you would like to then go back and revisit some of the questions, or if you think you know a subject really, really well and it within your course, then you can quickly skip to the learning check, see if you know everything and move on. Or if you're not quite as good as you thought you were, you can then resit the element. That's perfect. Again, it works for you. So glad you brought that up there. But yes, onto the subject of these risk assessments. They are an absolutely fantastic addition to the general certificate. They cover every single hazard in the course in detail, which gives you lots of practice, lots of key points to remember when you kind of go into the real world and you have to do these yourself. So we all know that practical application of knowledge has long been known to embed learning. It's one of the most effective ways of learning. I think, I don't want to chuck some stats out there, but I'm pretty sure 80% of learners prefer practical learning to other types as well. And it's the one that kind of gets the most, you probably need to check that. It's the one that gives you the most retention of the knowledge. So learning by doing is just such a powerful tool. By adding a risk assessment at the end of all of the 20 main hazard modules, the learner is encouraged to assess each hazard in great detail. And for the first time, people who've ever done a risk assessment, this is fantastic at building confidence. You know, when you're first given a form by your employer and you're not quite sure how to fill it out, you know, it may seem straightforward enough, but you're a little bit nervous. You could make a mistake, but hopefully after doing it 20 times, that is if you choose to do these activities, then hopefully it can kind of give you the confidence and the understanding of these risk assessment forms in the real world. So, and on the other side, you might have a learner who's taking this course, who's been doing this for 20 years. You know, I know what a risk assessment is, and you know, it can allow you to check your process. It can allow our learners to just double check that everything they're doing is correct. You know, is there anything you could be doing better? At the end of the day, risk assessments are incredibly important in the workplace. They're not just there just as a fun activity. You know, they're really important so that you don't get any accidents and risks in your workplace. So, you know, we really, really want to drill this into people just to make sure that they're definitely getting it right and definitely kind of using that critical thinking that we're teaching them on every single hazard, so that they're really going into detail. You know, they're really looking for every single one of these hazards. You know, is this a possible hazard for our company or for your first ever risk assessment form? And that's, yeah, as well, experiential learning with these risk assessments is a little bit more interesting after reading text on a page for a while. It allows the mind to take a break. You can have an activity, you can take a little break on just reading text and just looking at these images and making these connections. It kind of allows your mind to practice some of the things you've learned, just to embed that knowledge even more, and then is a perfect way just to break the content up into those bite-sized chunks, as we've mentioned before.
Offering alternative ways to digest information, I think, is a very, very, very good way of retaining attention. So I think that's fantastic. And I honestly, I think this idea of giving the learner the opportunity 20 attempts, not only to essentially master each risk hazard, but then to interpret that information into a risk assessment, which is their end, it's the unit 2 assessment at the end of the day. And that's huge. I think that gives a huge level of confidence. It would give me the level of confidence I need to complete a risk assessment. Thank you very much, Saffire. I have come to the end of this interrogation. Thank you very much for sitting down with me and blessing us with the innovations and the technical terms and the fantastic, just throwing out there terminology I've never heard before. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too over the top for you and for some of the listeners. Yeah, you can learn about a lot of these theories online if anybody is interested in taking a little look at some of these techniques. Our main goal here is just to make you all aware of how much effort goes into these courses and how important we think it is to learn these techniques, and how seriously we take our job at teaching you with these courses.
Thank you very much. I hope to have you on. It will be by popular demand, I predict. Thank you very much for your time, Saffire.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Thank you very much, Saffire. Once again, I realise I've already said thank you several times at this point, but thank you once again for joining us on the Health and Safety Digest to really dissect the new innovations to the online offering that we offer here at Astutis of the NEBOSH General Certificate. I found it entirely honestly incredibly fascinating, just some of the decision making that I didn't really understand went on behind the scenes. So thank you very much for lifting that lid for me, and I hope you at home were able to really take some stuff like I did away from that. So that ends our chat with Saffire, but if you have any other questions regarding our offering of the Astutis NEBOSH version of the General Certificate Online version, then please email me directly. You can find my email address below this episode of the podcast. You can find us on social media. You know what to do. Just type in Astutis and you will find us there. So thank you very much for listening to this series of episodes. We no doubt will be back into your podcast feeds very, very soon. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe. Speak soon.